To welcome everyone to our presentation today, Opposing the War Between Israel, U.S., and Iran, an online panel with Iranian women's rights advocates. We're really glad that you're here. This is an important topic. It's something that is critical for the safety of a lot of people. I'm grateful that we have some people who can share with us information so that we can understand not only what is happening and the historical context, but also what we can do. We're excited to have both Elahe Amani and Frieda Afary to speak about how U.S. activists can take a principled stand against the violations of human rights by all the powers involved and defend progressive, life-affirming forces inside Iran, the Middle East region, and the U.S. Co-hosted by Northeast Los Angeles Alliance for Democracy. Our website is nilafordemocracy.org, so that this recording of this program will be on that, as well as programmings of past talks. And I would like to introduce Elahe Amani, Chair of Women's Intercultural Network, board member of the National Association for Community Mediation, Emerita, California State University, and editor of the women's section of the monthly journal Peace Mark, a publication of human rights activists in Iran. And we also have Frieda Afary, Iranian American librarian, translator, author of Socialist Feminism, A New Approach, and producer of Iranian Progressives in Translation. So we're going to start with Elahe today. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Mary Linda. Thank you for the invitation of Indivisible and Frieda Afary, my friend, to present in this very timely presentation conversation. I first going to provide a history and context of this war between Iran and Israel, and then a feminist perspective on this war, which as of today, we all know that we are all listening to news, and as of today, we know that we have a fragile ceasefire. And as I heard from Iran, family and friends of those who lost their loved ones are busy kind of with memorials and other things. And I'm sure it's the same in Israel too, with the civilian lost their lives in Iranian attack to Israel. So I should start by saying that the large scale Israeli assault on Iran on June 13, 2025, and escalating hostilities between Israel and Iran from proxy conflicts, which we all heard about it in the news, to open warfare deeply alarmed many Iranian citizens who reacted with concern, fear, and uncertainty. This escalation must be understood within the broader historical context of decade-long hostilities between the two nations. Following the establishment of the formal diplomatic relations in 1950, Iran under the Pahlavi monarchy maintained a pragmatic relationship with Israel. This dynamic shifted dramatically after the 1979, when the newly established Islamic Republic of Iran adopted a confrontation stance toward Israel, enshrining anti-Zionism as a cornerstone of its foreign policy. From the 1980s onward, Iran's regional strategy emphasized proxy warfare, and same as Israel, including support for Hezbollah in Lebanon and Palestinian factions such as Hamas. Israel also engaged in covert operation and sabotage, transforming the bilateral relationship from a tense but cold peace into one marked with open hostility. The period from the early 2000 to 2020 witnessed an intensification of what has been termed as shadow war, quote unquote shadow war, characterized by cyber attacks, targeted assassination by Israel, including of Iranian nuclear scientists, and act of sabotage. Iranian aligned militia in turn launched attacks on Israel interests throughout the region. This covert and indirect warfare culminated in a more direct hostilities during 2023 and 2024, particularly following the event of October 7, 2023, when Hamas launched a large-scale attack on Israel, killing approximately 1,200 people and taking 200 hostages, which we know that the massive Israeli attack on Palestinians in Gaza account for more than 50,000 civilian deaths up to now. The ensuing months saw a marked escalation. February 14, 2024, an Israeli sabotage operation reported caused explosion on an Israeli gas pipeline. April 1st, 2024, Israel bombed Iran consulate in Damascus, killing 2 Iranian generals. April 14, 2024, Iran retaliated with over 300 drones and missiles. Most were intercepted. April 19, 2024, a suspected Israeli airstrike targeted Iranian air defense system. July 31st, 2024, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Tehran. October 2024, Iran launched missiles at Israel, prompting further Israeli retaliation strikes. And finally, direct military confrontation and war in June 2025. On June 13, 2025, Israel launched what is widely regarded as the most extensive direct assault on Iran in modern history. Based on prevailing interpretation of international law, Israel's actions constitute a violation of UN Charter, which prohibits the use of force against another state's sovereignty, except in case of imminent threat or under Security Council authorization. Legal scholars argue that the attack fails to meet the strict criteria of anticipatory self-defense, rendering it unlawful under international law. Moreover, while this confrontation can be analyzed through the lenses of so-called an unequal war, both Iran and Israel are targeting of civilian infrastructure, as evidenced by repeated airstrike on densely populated areas, raise serious concerns regarding violation of international humanitarian laws. As of June 24th, human rights activists in Iran, Herana, reported over 900 people killed, civilian people killed. Iranian Health Ministry stated that more than 4,000 people have been wounded by Israeli strike. As of June 24, same date, Iran ballistic missiles attack on Israel resulted in the death of 28 people, all but one whom were civilian. The Israeli Ministry of Health reported 3,461 hospitalizations, including 2 fatalities in the hospital as of June 25th, 2025. To take innocent lives is not justice. Defense of honor, it's indeed a it's indeed a moral one to all humanity. Both governments have exhibited consistent disregard for international humanitarian norms, with actions that likely constitute grave violation of human rights and international humanitarian law. The use of disproportionate force, targeting of non-combatant, and rhetoric suggesting collective punishment all contribute to the ongoing humanitarian crisis. While this is a highly asymmetrical conflict, military and geopolitically, it is civilian in both Iran and Israel who bear the brunt of devastation. War spares no one, neither in Tehran nor in Haifa. It represents neither justice nor mercy, only destruction. Howard Zinn was right when he said, quote, "There is no flag large enough to cover the shame of killing innocent people," unquote. In providing a context regarding the situation in Islamic Republic of Iran, I should mention that the Islamic Republic of Iran stands at a critical juncture, facing an unprecedented crisis of legitimacy. Over the past 46 years, the Iranian people have endured persistent human rights violation, execution, and widespread repression. Today, these issues are compounded by deepening poverty, economic mismanagement, and lack of political will to address the social, economic, and political demand of the population. As a result, public trust in the regime has eroded to historical low, with many shifting from support to open opposition. Declining electoral participation in recent parliamentary election in 2024 exemplify the regime waning legitimacy. Voter turnout reached only 41% nationwide and fell below 25% in Tehran, marking a record low even after authorities extended voting hours and pressured citizens to participate. Independent monitors suggest actual turnout may have been even lower. This disengagement reflects a widespread belief that elections lack fairness, especially following the mass disqualification of reformist and moderate candidates by the Guardian Council. Also, mass protests and state repression. I should mention that since 2010, Iran has witnessed successive waves of nationwide protests. In 2017 and 18 to 19, and most notably during the 2022 to 2023 Women Life Freedom Uprising, sparked by the killing of Gina Mahsa Amini. These demonstrations involving millions across more than 150 cities have been met with severe repression. According to Harana, human rights activist news agency, a minimum of 522 protesters killed and more than 20,000 arrested. The scale and persistence of these protests, which includes significant participation from women, youth, particularly Gen Z, ethnic minority, and labor union, underscore a deep rejection of regime's legitimacy. In terms of gender apartheid and suppression of women's rights, the enforcement of mandatory hijab laws and broader gender-based discrimination remains central source of public alienation. According to a 2020 Gammon survey, it's a surveying agency focusing on Iran, 75% of Iranians oppose compulsory veiling. Women are systematically excluded from serving as judges and face unequal rights in family law and are subjected to state violence and morality policing. Such policies have intensified the regime's disconnect from women and the younger generations. Corruption and economic mismanagement. I should say that Iran economic crisis is marked by over 40% annual inflation and food prices rising more than 60% year over year. More than 30% of Iranians now live below the poverty line. The country ranked 149 out of 180 on Transparency International 2023 Corruption Perception Index, highlighting pervasive elite corruption. The government's failure to address economic hardship and corruption has fueled widespread public disillusionment. In terms of suppression of freedom and international isolation, Iran is classified as quote unquote not free by Freedom House 2024. And of course, we know that these reports have their own biases too, but still, with extremely low score for political rights and civil liberties. The country ranks among the world's most repressive on internet and press freedom, with journalists routinely imprisoned, tortured, and exiled. These restrictions on free expression and association further erode public trust and limit peaceful avenues for dissidents. Exile of intellectual and youth migration is happening in a wide scale. Iran suffers from one of the world's highest rate of educated migration, with an estimated 180,000 professionals leaving annually. Surveying indicate that only 22% of Iranians identify as religious and fewer than 20% support the current theocratic system. The ongoing brain drain reflects a profound crisis of confidence in the country's future, particularly among its youths and intellectuals. The Islamic Republic of Iran also faces a profound, multifaceted legitimacy crisis rooted in political repression, economic decline, gender justice, injustice, and systematic corruption. Statistical evidence and sustained mass mobilization demonstrate that the regime no longer enjoys the support or consent of large segments of Iranian population, particularly among women, youth, and the middle class. This crisis challenged the very foundation of a state's authority and underscored the urgent need for comprehensive reform. And the least reported is the Iranian authorities are taking advantage. This is happening right now during this really disastrous war between Iran and Israel, and while we have a fragile ceasefire right now. Iranian authorities are taking advantage of this fragile ceasefire with Israel to intensify an internal security crackdown across the country with mass arrest and execution. This is happening in the last particularly 3-4 days. Iranian media announced yesterday on Thursday that Iran's security forces have arrested more than 700 people on political and security charges since the start of the war. Now, I want to share some of the resistance and the voice of civil society and anti-war sentiment inside Iran. The Iranian people, particularly women and youth, have demonstrated remarkable resilience and agency in the face of political repression and external conflict. Despite operating under severe constraint and double binds, Iranian civil society has remained highly engaged, expressing creative forms of resistance and issuing numerous statements opposing both initiated Israeli war and the policies of Islamic Republic of Iran. This engagement has intensified in recent days, culminating in a surge of anti-war activism and solidarity during the recent escalation of conflict with Israel. Iranian Nobel Peace Laureate Narges Mohammadi has called upon activists to unite in demanding ceasefire between Iran and Israel. In a recent exclusive message to Time, Narges Mohammadi highlighted the devastating impact of the conflict, which has displaced millions and inflicted further damage on Iran's critical infrastructure, exacerbating an already dire economic crisis. Narges Mohammadi herself has been compelled to leave Tehran when President Trump calls on Tehran, a city with 10 million people and close to 6 million in metropolitan area of Tehran, to be immediately evacuated. Also, in a joint statement, two Nobel Peace Laureate and two internationally acclaimed film directors have also called for an immediate cessation of hostility and a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, underscoring the urgent need for peace and dialogue. Civil society resistance is further exemplified by a statement from Iranian political prisoners. 7 women currently detained in Tehran's notorious Evin prison, which, by the way, since one of the missiles of Israeli attacked Evin prison, now I saw this morning a video clip that maybe more tens of buses are lining up to move the prisoners in Evin prison to other prisoners, that they don't have any room or facility doesn't allow for keeping them. Many families haven't heard for the last 2-3 days from their loved one in a prison in Evin or other prisoners. So I go back to civil society resistance is further exemplified by a statement from Iranian political prisoner. 7 women currently detained in Tehran notorious Evin prison have issued 2 separate declaration statements calling for an end to war, denouncing both Israeli military aggression and the authoritarianism of Islamic Republic of Iran. These statements emphasize that genuine liberation for Iranians can only achieve through grassroots mobilization and social movement rather than foreign intervention. One statement signed by Reyhaneh Ansari, Sakineh Parvaneh, Verishe Moradi, and Golrukh Irai categorically rejected reliance on external powers and condemned the recent Israeli attack, which have resulted in civilian casualties and infrastructure destruction. Another statement by Anishe Asadullahi, Nahid Khodanju, and Nasrin Javadi addresses the Iranian government directly, asserting that wars invariably harm ordinary people, those who bear no responsibility for their inception. Despite their incarceration, these women express solidarity with the broader society and urge collective resistance to war. A coalition of labor unions and social organizations across Iran has issued a comprehensive joint statement titled Joint Statement of Labor and Social Organizations Against War and the Current Dangerous Crisis. The declaration condemned both Israeli and Iranian military action, particularly those targeting civilians, and denounced the pursuit of use of weapons of mass destruction. The statements articulate a long-standing demand for peace and welfare. The statement highlights, quote, "For years we have shouted no to war, no to killing, we want lasting welfare. But the regime continues its path on destruction, chasing nuclear weapons under the slogan of wiping out Israel and fighting the so-called Great Satan, America." This hellish situation is not accidental. It has been imposed on our society. The signature that comprising nurses, truck drivers, oil workers, teachers, retirees, and children rights defendants also highlights the regime intensification of internal repression under the pretext of war, including arrest, execution, and accusation of espionage. The Coordinating Council of Iranian Teacher Trade Association issued another statement very similar to the language of the previous statements that I shared with you. The Iranian Rider Association has condemned also Israel's blatant aggression against Iranian territory and emphasized the vital role of riders and intellectuals in amplifying independent voices and supporting freedom movements. The association statement framed the conflict as a struggle between two oppressive regimes, warning that ongoing violence not only causes civilian casualty, but also derail efforts towards freedom and equality in Iran. Other women's and grassroots organizations also issued various statements. I just skipped part of that, but if you want, I can share it with you later. The collective action of independent Iranian women that comprises of 23 women organizations in Iranian diaspora in a statement emphasized, quote, "We are firmly opposed to the excessive expansion of militarism, both nuclear and non-nuclear, in Iran and in the world. In times of war and occupation, occupation, I think, not that I think, I know it's referring to Palestine. Women are faced with a double violence, not only from bombs and bullets, but from the very solution that have already marginalized their lives. War places a greater economic, psychological, and caregiving burden on women. It reduces access to vital resources for mothers, nurses, and survivors. And at the same time, with increasing militarization, it makes the social space more masculine, authoritarian, and oppressive. In such economic, political, sexual, and racial condition, women's bodies are once again turned into the battlefields. These policies are not used for security, but for appropriation of global resources by the small minority and control over the lives of majority of the people. While substantial segment of Iranian civil society inside Iran and also Iranian in diaspora oppose the war, conservative elements such as the daily newspaper Kayhan in Iran have advocated for continuation of hostility until, quote, complete destruction of Israel, unquote, as reflected in a recent front page editorial. Conversely, Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the former Shah of Iran, has faced widespread criticism for expressing support vividly and not only one time, repeatedly, for Israel bombing of Iranian cities. Independent media and artists in Iran have consistently played a crucial role in exposing misinformation propaganda by both Iranian regime and foreign powers, including Israel and United States. Their efforts contribute to a more nuanced understanding of the conflict and reinforce the importance of independent critical voices in times of honor. Iranian civil society is taking a clear stand against war, condemning the recent Israeli attack, and refusing to remain silent in the face of atrocities committed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. The collective wisdom of Iranian people does not incline them to support the Islamic Republic in this disastrous conflict, nor does it to inspire them to cheer for regime change orchestrated by foreign forces or by figures like Netanyahu, a leader who has waged a genocidal war against the Palestinian people. So Iranian women are also very aware that the drums of war and calls for regime change by foreign powers and their Iranian allies will not serve the goal of anti-authoritarian progressive uprising of women life freedom. As Arundhati Roy once said, the idea of a just war or a humanitarian war is cruel oxymoron. All wars are about control, profit, power, never about compassion, unquote. Iranian women and broader civil society are mobilizing to build a third space against war and dictatorship, one rooted in dignity, justice, democracy, human rights, and the agency of Iranian people for future of Iran. So knowing this context about Iran and the war, I just want to end with, so what is a feminist perspective towards this war? Number one is weaponizing of feminism. Many Iranian and Middle Eastern feminists criticize the use of women's rights rhetoric by Western and Israeli leaders to justify military action against Iran. They argue that framing war as a feminist or humanitarian intervention is a distortion, and that bombing Iran in the name of women's liberation, gender equality, freedom, only brings more violence and suffering to women on the ground. Number two, a feminist perspective on this war is also, I have to say, many publications from Iranian feminists on social media or what I have received from them through media, activists from Iran's anti-authoritarian uprising, Women Life Freedom movement, which gained global attention after the 2022 protests for Mahsa Amini, have explicitly rejected the idea that military attacks can bring gender equality, freedom, and regime change. They emphasize that the true change must come from within Iranian society, not through foreign intervention. Selectively invoking concern for Iranian women by Western media and those who don't value the intersectionality of gender equality in global South, and particularly during times of conflict, while ignoring broader regional issues, is not supported by Iranian feminists in their wide diversity and perspectives. The struggle of women in global South, West Asia, and Iran is inclusive of ending violence against women in public and private spheres, resisting suppression of the voice of women's human rights defender, and brave civilian disobedience and peaceful resistance on mandatory hijab and other forms of human rights violation. This selective outrage is seen as historical and as serving the strategic goals, historical positioning of Western media and some white feminism, as we call it, serving the strategic goals of a state interest rather than genuine feminist solidarity. The reality is from Tehran to East LA, from Haifa to Kabul, feminist gender equality activists and women's human rights defenders are shaping a shared narrative, one that stands firmly against war, genocide, tyranny, and gender apartheid in all its forms. The intertwined history of dictatorship, oppression, resistance, and civil disobedience, both here, near, and far from the fabric of our struggle. They create a kaleidoscope of memory and resistance that sustain our hope for a better world and compels us to keep moving forward. As Arundhati Roy reminds us, quote, another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing, unquote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elahe. That was really beautiful. Important information, such an important perspective. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much, Elahe, for this beautiful, comprehensive, thoughtful presentation. And thanks to you, mine will be much shorter because you covered so much so well. So what I'd like to add to Elahe's presentation is that I want to ask, well, what did the bombings achieve? First of all, massive destruction inside Iran. And in addition to the numbers of like over 600 killed and over 5,000 injured that the government itself estimates, which and most likely is much more than that. Plus, of course, 30 people were killed in Israel, over 1,000, over 3,000 were injured there. But also on the Iranian front, the destruction was so severe that even ports were bombed. And so now the situation inside the country is that we have an authoritarian government that for years has not shown any interest in even rebuilding infrastructure in a way that would help ordinary people. And now faced with much more destruction, to the point that people's access to water and food is severely endangered. And one of my friends in Iran was saying that she actually predicts a famine inside Iran. I mean, in addition to such a large part of the population living under the poverty line, now even the means of bringing food inside the country is much more limited. So this is just the beginning of it. Not to mention also that nobody is talking about the nuclear radiation that would have been released, especially both from the Israeli bombings, but also from the US bombing last Saturday. Those bunker buster bombs that Trump administration ordered to be dropped on Natanz, the three nuclear installations, Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan. How could they not have released nuclear radiation? But we're in a situation in which we have an authoritarian government that would certainly not want to reveal any of that information. And the IAEA cannot get in there and examine what type of radiation was released or how much was released. And the US government simply doesn't care, and neither does the US media. I keep listening to CNN, MSNBC, even the New York Times. Nobody mentions the nuclear radiation. It's as if they don't really care. All they ask is, were the nuclear installations obliterated or not? So that's what the debate is about. And of course, also on the War Powers Act, and that Congress should have been asked. But there seems to be no interest on the part of the US media about this most fundamental question. And that itself, I think, should say something to us about the way in which the level of inhumanity that our fascist government in the US represents has penetrated other sectors of society, including the media, which is supposed to be telling us, giving us accurate information and fighting disinformation. Now, what else resulted from the bombing? As Elahe mentioned, much more severe repression inside Iran. And of course, she mentioned the bombing of the Evin prison, which really says something about how the Israeli government does not care about the progressive opposition in Iran, because the Evin prison is the symbol of a symbolic site for progressive Iranian activists who have been arrested and imprisoned. So to bomb that says something about the intentions of the Israeli government. Plus the other arrests that she mentioned. And so of the 700 people who have been arrested by government estimates on charges of so-called spying for Israel, they are mostly Kurdish, Afghan, and Baha'i youth. Baha'is are a religious minority who have been persecuted in Iran since the coming to power of the Islamic Republic, and prior to that too, but intensely under the Islamic Republic. So these are the people that they're arresting. They're calling them Israeli spies without any, or spies of Israel without any evidence, and planning to execute them, in addition to the others that they've executed already. And a very prominent Iranian physician, a Swedish Iranian physician, Ahmad Reza Jalali, who's been in prison in Iran for several years after he came to Iran for a visit from Sweden for a conference. The government has said that it is most likely going to execute him at this point. He's totally innocent, has no connection to Israel and spying for Israel, and yet this highly prominent scientist, doctor, is going to be executed. What else? How are the Palestinians any better off? The Palestinians are worse off. The intensification of Israel's bombing of Gaza and the assaults on the West Bank are just mind-boggling. And what about the Ukrainians? The Ukrainians are worse off because the focus on the Israel and US's bombing of Iran meant that the media attention to Ukraine was weakened, and so the U.S. government claims that for it helping Israel bomb Iran or itself bombing Iran is a priority, and so that actually strengthens Vladimir Putin, whose aim is to take over all of Ukraine and restore the old Russian Empire. So let's not forget about all these results of the recent bombings. Now, why should we care about the Iranians? I mean, if you listen to the media, the only thing that we should care about is whether the nuclear installations were obliterated or not. But why should we care about the Iranians? I think Elahe did a beautiful job in explaining that there are so many affirmative humanist struggles inside Iran that we in the US can identify with, especially now that we have a fascist government that is also run by religious fundamentalists. And so I think that more than ever, we can identify with a struggle in Iran that is so strongly aimed at the separation of religion and state, because they have lived under a regime for over 45 years that is religious fundamentalist, and so every aspect of life is determined by religious fundamentalism, whether it's education, labor, family, media, international relations, and they can teach us some lessons. And also, our looking at their history can show us what will happen to us if this religious fundamentalist government that we have right now continues and intensifies its repression. We can learn about labor struggles inside Iran. We can also learn about how not so much learn, but identify with the fact that just as in the US, there is an effort to dehumanize immigrants as criminals and deport them, detain them, send them to other countries, to labor camps and prisons in other countries. Here in Iran, the Afghan population is dehumanized, criminalized. There are 4.5 million Afghans in Iran, and they, so much like the immigrant labor population in the US, they do a lot of the work that Iranians themselves don't want to do. And so instead of being appreciated, they're criminalized, they're dehumanized. And so now the government is, right after the bombing, one of the things that they started to do was to announce that no one should even rent rooms or apartments to the Afghan population. And they've intensified the deportation of Afghans. And I also want to mention another aspect of the Iranian opposition that, at least inside Iran, the labor and women's struggles and the national minority struggles, that's very important, is that they're very much opposed to the prison system as it exists. Because they've seen for many years how people are accused of crimes without any evidence and put in jail and either executed or allowed to rot in jail. And so for them, not having due process is really a fundamental struggle. And so not only do they believe in due process, they also believe that the current prison system as it exists, whether in Iran or in the US, is wrong. I wouldn't go as far as saying that they're exactly abolitionists, because abolitionism is a struggle that's been very much defined and theorized by Black feminist theorists and activists in the US. But I think they would identify with a lot of the ideas of the prison abolitionist struggle in the US. And they're also, a lot of them are also internationalists in the sense that prior to this latest Israeli bombing of Iran, a lot of Iranians were more than happy to say, look, we are not against Israel. A lot of them don't support what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, but they want a society, a government that would have peaceful coexistence with Israel. So they don't like this language that reduces everything to being against Israel and reduces their identity to just being against Israel and the US. And I think that's really significant, given that all we hear from the government is that it's as if the entirety of the Iranian existence is to just be against Israel and be against the US. But of course, now with the bombings, with the Israeli bombings and with the US dropping those bunker buster bombs on Iran, frankly, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of hostility now. And it didn't have to be like this. And then finally, one point that I want to single out is that we also need to think about the differences between the situation that Iranians face and the situation that we face in the US now. Now, Iranians have had this 45-year experience of living under an authoritarian regime. You can say that even in the beginning of the Islamic Republic, you can even say that there were elements of fascism there, in the sense that different historical experience, but in the sense that millions of people supported the Islamic Republic, knowing that it was religious fundamentalist, it was misogynist, it was based on hatred. And so in that respect, they have had something similar. But at this point, the majority of the population of Iran, I would say, at least 80-90% of the population of Iran, they do not support the existing government. They do not support authoritarianism. They want a secular democratic society, and they believe in basic women's rights, basic labor rights. So they're in a different situation. What they're facing right now is really authoritarianism, in the sense that it's repression from above and forcing them to live a certain way and act a certain way that they don't want. In the US, I think we face a different situation, in the sense that we have both authoritarianism and fascism yes, half the adult population, based on the election results, because half the adult population is opposed to the Trump administration, or certainly didn't vote for Trump. 77 million people voted for Trump, 75 million people voted for Kamala Harris. So they are experiencing authoritarianism. But considering that 77 million people voted for Trump, and the latest polls say that his popularity is about 45%. When it comes to the deportations of undocumented immigrants, it's about 54% of public supports it. So in that sense, I think that we can say we are experiencing fascism in the sense that we have millions and millions of people in this country who believe in this type of rule. If we go by Robert Paxton's definition of fascism, it's a mass rejection of reason. It's a mass embrace of social Darwinism, or the ideology of survival of the fittest. It's a combination of internal so-called purification of the getting rid of the other, and external imperialist expansionism. It's misogyny, it's patriarchy, it's racism, it's extreme nationalism, it's erasure of history, it's disinformation, it's extreme capitalism. So the fact is that we live in a country in which millions and millions of people believe in this. They might change their minds at some point, but at this point, it is not, our situation is different from the situation that the Iranians face, in that the majority of Iranians are deeply opposed to the regime, and they believe in separation of religion and state. They believe in democracy, different maybe versions of it, but they believe in democracy. In the US, it's a different situation. So I think that we really need to be conscious of that and figure out how we're going to respond to it without giving up, without thinking that it's impossible to overcome, but at the same time being really mindful of the barriers that we face and the efforts that we need to make to reach out to people and change minds and hearts. So I will stop, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Frieda. Listening to both of you, it becomes so clear all of the reasons that we need to be aware of, understand, and illuminate these struggles that are happening around the world, specifically today, speaking about those in Iran as well as in Israel and Gaza. I know that we are in the middle of our own crisis in this country, and there's a lot of focus on that, but it is critical that we support the resistance for the fight for a humane and just society around the world, where I think we need to be heading. So thank you both. I really appreciate all that you shared. I wonder, actually, Elahe, if you might share about the event that is happening in 2 days, Association for Community Mediation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Frieda, for all the recent developments that's happening and shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The event, it's an event, listening circles that mediators beyond borders that I work with them. We had the inaugural gender training with them for the Middle East many years ago. So I've been in contact with them. I'm part of them. And also National Association of Community Mediation, which I'm on their board. It's they're organizing this event along with Women's Intercultural Network and Visions, which very focus on racial justice, and it's a very good organization, progressive organization. We are organizing a listening circle that me and 2 other Iranian, about 5 to 7 minutes, and then it's a small group discussion, and then coming back. So it's a listening circle organized by the 4 organizations.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Both Frieda and Elahe, do either of you have comments or questions based on what the other shared?
my only comment is we are just so happy, so lucky to have Elahe, because she has so much experience. She's a long time feminist activist, both on the Iranian front and the US front. That's one of the unique things about Elahe, that she's such an internationalist. You see so many Iranians who are just doing activities around Iran, but she's truly international. So many feminists in the city know her. She spoke at the Black Women for Wellness conference a few months ago, or International Women's Day. She, she goes to the UN. She's part of international groups. So we're just so lucky to have her. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm proud also of everything you're doing, Frieda, in our community and community at large. You are really an inspiration, and I follow you closely and share whatever you do with my network, because it's making an impact and it's inspiring people. Thank you for all you do.
So I would love to have anyone who has any questions or comments or wants to elicit discussion between Frieda and Elahe.
I see DP Snyder.
Yes, DP Snyder, please.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see all of you, and especially my dear, dear friend Frieda, and my friend Susanna, who is also in this session. My question may be unanswerable, but as I watch all of this absolute disregard for human life, I'm impressed by the relationship or potential relationship, well, there is a relationship between the techno-feudalists on this globe and everything that is happening. And I've been doing my own research and see that both Ukraine and Iran are very rich in rare earth minerals. And I'm curious if either of you have any notion as to whether there is an agenda that the propaganda is all, oh, denuclearize Iran, but the real goal of Israel and the United States is to take over the natural resources available there. Can you speak on that?
I'll defer to Elahe.
It's always, that's the case. It's always all these, no matter in what the Western media or colonialism, neocolonialism claim, it's always about accessing resources that belong to the people. And yes, definitely, I'm not necessarily, I cannot say that's the only reason, but definitely that's part of the broader strategy towards West Asia. I don't like the terminology of Middle East because it's colonial-centric term, as Middle East was the Middle East of England when England was the center of the world. So West Asian countries, right now we see lots of changes in that, and North Africa, and I think the rise of the far right globally, I think that is part of that. Definitely accessing resources is part of it.
Go ahead, Samuel.
I mean, it's very hard for us to have questions after all that here bringing up reality. But the question I have is, in agreement with you, the question is, what do we do? How do we act to undo this fascist nonsense?
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, number one, we have to speak out loudly and say, we don't support this bombing. This is not going to help us. This is going to destroy the world. Because number one, they didn't even get rid of the nuclear installations. And besides, the idea of bombing another country to get rid of its nuclear installation, this is the law of the jungle. This is not how the world is supposed to operate. Are we going to let any ruler attack any other country because they feel that they are in danger and therefore they can take everything in their own hands and they can destroy the population of that country? and not even care. I mean, this is going to come back to us. That's what we need to say. We're going to need to say, look, if we let Trump get away with this, and if we let Netanyahu get away with this, then some other country will come and attack us. You can be sure that one day China will try to invade the US, say that the US has been taken over by a madman, and therefore we're going to invade it. And so we cannot allow this insane strongman fascistic logic to go on. That's number one. Number two is that if, again, I'm focused on the US for now. If we agree that what we're facing is fascism, and fascism is based on the mass rejection of reason and the mass embrace of the ideology of survival of the fittest and extreme capitalism, if it's based on misogyny, disinformation, erasure of history, let's address that. Let's find ways to reach out to common, ordinary people and address the erasure of history, address the disinformation. I mean, just a very simple fact that I bring up among librarian crowds, and I think I've brought them up at individual meetings too. Did you know that 50% of the US public is functionally illiterate, and that only 30% of our elementary school students read at grade level? Why aren't we talking about this? I mean, we keep talking about democracy and defending our democracy, but our population is functionally illiterate. And so they have become prone to disinformation. Another very immediate way in which we can address this is that we really need to push the media to get over this way of presenting the news as if, okay, one day Trump did this and one day Trump did that, and just it's as if it's a, what is the word, whack-a-mole, instead of really addressing the whole. Let them talk about fascism. Let them, they need to say this is fascism, and they need to analyze it. The New York Times needs to do that more. I'm talking about the mainstream media because that's what more people read and view. But most importantly, I think that we need to address the assault on immigrants in the US. That is the most immediate issue, I think, because if they continue to get away with this, with the not having due process, if this government continues to get away with saying that if you simply cross the border illegally, you're a criminal, and therefore we can arrest you and we can send you to a gulag in El Salvador or now to Africa, then nobody is safe. Nobody is safe. So I think that we need to do more on this issue of due process and confront the attack on immigrants as criminals. And I can't tell you how many times I've come across people that I know even voted for Kamala Harris. I know for a fact that they voted for Kamala Harris. But when it comes to the immigration issue, they say, oh, well, nobody should come here illegally. And this country is for people who are living in it as citizens and for people who've come here illegally. So they've already accepted the logic that if you're undocumented, you're a criminal, and therefore it's okay to detain you and deport you and get rid of you. So we really need to have that type of discussion. As a librarian, I keep encouraging people, go to your public library, talk to your public librarian, tell them that you want to have library programs. Either they organize it or you help organize it with them on these topics. Because public libraries are everywhere in this country, in every community, and they're still the one place where you can really reach out to local members of the community. So those are some of the things. And of course, address the misogyny. That let's find ways of addressing the patriarchy and misogyny and not letting this government get away with it. Why should they be able to get away with saying that DEI is a crime? I mean, since when did DEI become a crime, and on what basis? And why is this country caving into that? and then one more important point, and I'll stop. A very important part of fascism is that it's not only that this mass embrace of mass rejection of reason and mass embrace of social Darwinism. It's also complicity on the part of the elite who aren't fascist but who bow to it because they're too afraid, or they think that if they stay quiet, they will keep their job, they will protect their family. And we need to say that that's not true. You can be quiet under a fascist regime. Even if you stay silent, you will still perish, because fascism is about mass destruction. And if we don't discuss that, if we don't make more and more people aware of what fascism is and what its ramifications are, I think that a lot of people are just going to say, well, okay, it's authoritarianism. I'll stay silent until things change, maybe in 5 or 10 years. And we need to say, no, it's not that they're going to change. If you stay silent, they will just get worse and worse and worse, to the point where this country will be destroyed, and much more.
Janice said, Frieda, this American illiteracy was planned and worked on for at least 50 years. This is all a very old plan that we, the people, are now becoming aware of. Yes, I too believe that the having an uneducated, uninformed public is much more easy to manipulate, and so I believe also that it's intentional, and then also Samuel said protesting bombing will not get rid of the fascism, so I can put that as a question to you. But I believe that in standing up as a people for a just and humane world, we can take down fascism. So that is, but it requires many different things. Just going to rallies doesn't do it. But do either of you have an answer to that?
I was gonna share in response to the previous question that someone in the chat wrote that Iran and United States have more in common. I do believe in that, and as an Iranian American, my lenses are focused on that. Just we're talking about the ICE and the immigration policy of current administration, but Iranian government during the last 2 days expelled 120,000 Afghan refugees to Afghanistan. On gender issues, they have so much similarity on the issue of the right of women to their own body, on abortion, on all other cases, which I have written in Farsi and English about it. But my lenses are focused on that commonalities, because I think we now, the world that we are living in for the last maybe gradually 20 years, when I was attending the Beijing Women Conference, the 4th International Women Conference in 1995, during that conference, which brought 45,000 people to Beijing, China, it was UN Women Conference. And during that conference, we were discussing the rise of global trends of the rise of religious extremism, like that we see in Iran, in position of power, and the rise of the new right and populist movements. And fast forward 30 years, we see that what is happening. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes, and this is the rise of these populist movements and far-right movements, it's not happening in the United States. It's happening in some European country, it's happening in India. They are in position of power. So we see a global trend towards what has many similarities, characteristic with the definition of fascism. So it's not only United States, because in some of the European countries, they're also in position of power. In France, they were close to getting position of power in last election. So we see that, and in Germany and other countries. So it's a global global confrontation of people, and that's the lens that I see these things. Definitely, there are many forms of resistance, and definitely we cannot stay silent. So we need a global solidarity, as Frieda also very well explained. We need global solidarity, and we need to stay on the case and be confronted. It's not the war, and not only on the street but online too, like what we are doing, what you're providing this space, but also online, particularly I am very focused on younger people, on Generation X and the generation, what they call it, Alpha, that they were born and raised in 21st century. So they are 25 years old or less. I think it's very important that we raise consciousness of the younger generation because the future belongs to them.
Thank you.
May I say one more thing there, Linda, if Ella has done?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to also call people's attention to the series that I did on humanist alternatives for Indivisible, because I really tried so hard to address the issue of fascism and how we can respond to it on various topics in a way that's both very informed and very specific and concrete. So there's healthcare, education, international issues, racism, labor. So please take a look. It's on my website, socialistfeminism.org, on the audiovisuals page.
Thank you. I will put that. I put the Neela link in, but I will put your site as well. Veena, I believe, is able to ask their question.
Yeah, my question's more about what I'm seeing on our media is so warped. Like, you can't get anything close to some of the things you shared with us today. Do you have recommendations for press outlets or sources that are on the ground in Iran that can give us really what's happening?
I think in these days, for any of the news that we are interested, the news doesn't come to us. We need to really do search and connect to the media. And I can work with Frieda. We put our heads together for some outlets that Frieda can share with you. But generally, also, if you do, the type of search that Frieda probably is expert, because the librarian. But there are lots of English good resources on Iran's issue, and definitely English becoming like a language. Many younger people in Iran also comfortable speaking it because of social media. Iran has one of the highest internet infiltration in the region, so many people are posting, and sometimes even from Iran, posting with the language of English. Even search Harana, HRANA.org. Yeah, this is a daily update. Very accurate, information because they are based in Iran, and they really pay attention to the numbers. So historically, I trust what they provide.
That's wonderful. Thank you. It is so critical to get the sources that are going to be sharing straight information.
And the only thing I would add is there's Zamane, which is a website based in Holland. It's an independent website, Persian language, but also has an English page. And they have excellent articles, and they promote human rights, democracy. They're not affiliated with any governments or They certainly don't support either the Islamic fundamentalists or the monarchists. I recommend the film Nasrin, which is a documentary about the life of Nasrin Sotoudeh. Is a prominent Iranian feminist human rights attorney who was in prison for many years. I did a series for Indivisible. The first part was called Lessons from Three Key Struggles, Iran, Syria, and Ukraine. And I tried to draw lessons from each, give some historical background, draw lessons from each for our struggle today against fascism. So you may want to take a look at that too.
And DP, you have another question?
Well, I just wanted to remind people that a socialist was just elected mayor of New York City.
Yes.
And not just any socialist, I mean, an extraordinary man. And we have a lot of elections coming up. So in response to the question of what can we do, which is, really the fundamental question, I just wanted to put out there that all of us need to support someone who is going to change the dynamic wherever we are. And we need to put all our effort into that and do as Elahe suggests and get out there and get young people motivated, get people who usually don't vote motivated, people who are who feel helpless, because that's one thing that happens with fascism. People begin to feel helpless, even people who usually do things. So please, let's pay attention, because we're going to have many, many seats up for grabs, and we have to help the right people win. That's all I wanted to say.
And DP and everyone, in addition to going to your local library and reaching out to the librarian and trying to have library discussions, community discussions, you can also set up literature tables at your farmers market, local farmers market. I think that's really a really great way of reaching out to you and just having conversations with ordinary people.
I think that it's been incredibly engaging, and having both of you here to answer questions and further elucidate what is on our minds is really very powerful. Are you on Instagram, or also are you on Blue Sky yet?
I'm on Blue Sky. I'm not, but I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook.
I wonder if there is something that you would each like to finish with?
I'll keep moving forward. We're not going to be silent.
Yes. Just that our lives and struggles are connected. What happens in the US greatly affects the rest of the world, the Middle East, and what happens in the Middle East greatly affects us. And let's not forget about Ukraine, this important, valiant struggle in happening, continuing. People are just giving their lives for, defending democracy and fighting Russian imperialism. And let's not forget about the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian women.
And I just want to say thank you all for your time Friday afternoon to join us. These are really valuable information and information about what everybody thinking about the situation. It's encouraging us, and we all keep together, keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you again, Frieda Afary, Elahe Amani. We really appreciate the time and energy it takes to share this information, and it's really priceless. So thank you. And thank you all for coming. And please share this programming with others. And as Frieda said, just keep talking. Just keep sharing with everyone in your life.
Yes.
Whenever you get a chance, I just go ahead and jump in whenever there's a chance. And because right now is a time where there could be huge changes happening. Sometimes at the worst things that happen can create the greatest gifts.
Yes.
So let's hope for that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.